So what if I told you that the best way to see the future isn't to predict it, but well, to just import it? It's this pretty radical idea that flips innovation on its head. It's not about some magical act of creation. It's really more about an act of propagation. Okay, that is a really bold claim, right? But what does it actually mean to trade on time? We're not talking about forecasting stock prices or trying to guess the next big trend. The big idea here is to treat time itself as a market with inefficiencies that, you can actually capitalize on. So here's the crucial point. This isn't about guessing what might happen. Chrono arbitrage is all about observing what has already happened, what's already working in a more advanced sector, and just applying it to one that's lagging behind. You're basically just bridging a gap that already exists. And this right here completely changes the game. All of a sudden, innovation stops being this mystical, unpredictable art form and becomes a much more deterministic process. It's about recognizing that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. And your job is to be the one to distribute it. Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, the key is understanding a concept called the time spread. It's all about decoding that unevenly distributed future we were just talking about. This gap, this measurable gap, is what makes the entire strategy possible. The slide just visualizes that gap perfectly, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the past, a slow, tangled, sequential process. It's filled with bottlenecks and it requires a ton of mental effort. But on the right, you see the future, a streamlined, parallel system with almost no friction. The difference isn't just about the technology. It's a completely different reality of how things operate. And this gap, this time spread, it exists because innovation just doesn't happen everywhere all at once. You can think of it like light traveling through space. Information and new ways of doing things, they propagate at a finite speed. They get slowed down by old habits, regulations, and just plain old institutional inertia. Now, to really get a handle on the time spread, we need to talk about latency. And I don't mean just as some technical term for laggy video games. Latency is this fundamental barrier that shapes our perception of reality, our interactions, and, yeah, even our economy. No, seriously, think about it for a second. How long is a moment? The answer completely changes depending on what you're doing, and you'll be surprised at how incredibly small the thresholds are for what feels real or instant. So, in a conversation, any delay over 200 milliseconds, your brain picks up on it. It's what leads to those awkward pauses, people talking over each other on a video call. Researchers even call it a fractured ecology because you literally no longer feel like you're sharing the same moment in time. And believe it or not, the tolerances get even tighter. In virtual reality, the delay between when you move your head and when the screen updates has to be under 20 milliseconds. Anything more than that, and that feeling of presence, of actually being there, is shattered. You might even start to feel physically sick. And then you have the extreme end of the spectrum, high-frequency trading. Here, the competition is measured in microseconds. A delay of just a few milliseconds can be the difference between making millions and losing millions. At this level, latency isn't about how something feels, it's pure, cold, hard cash. This table really drives the point home, laying out these critical thresholds for all sorts of different applications. You can see that 20 milliseconds for VR, the 200 for a good conversation with an AI. And look at this, even 3 seconds is enough to make half of all users give up on a mobile bank transfer. Our modern world really does run on these incredibly tight deadlines. Okay, enough theory. Let's look at a concrete example of chrono arbitrage in action. We're going to dive into how a 2025 workflow, something called the Next Edit Suggestion Framework, is being imported into the, let's say, 2015 world of software development right now. So this is the old way, the 2015 workflow. A developer makes one tiny change to a shared piece of code, and then they have to manually hunt down every single place in the codebase that's affected by that change. It's this long chain of slow, repetitive, frustrating steps that just drains your mental energy. This is the definition of a high-latency, high-friction process. But what if you could take all of those painful, manual steps and just compress them into this? A simple, fluid sequence of just hitting the tab key. That's the 2025 experience. This right here is the arbitrage. The AI analyzes past edits so it can predict the developer's intent. It doesn't need instructions. It proactively suggests not just what to change, but where to change it next. A tedious, error-prone task becomes this immersive, low-effort flow state. You've basically imported a future where the machine adapts to the human instead of the other way around. So this all sounds great, but how do you actually do it? How do you become a time traveler yourself? Well, it actually boils down to a surprisingly simple and repeatable 3-step playbook.
And the playbook is pretty straightforward. Step 1, identify your target. Find a pocket of the past, an industry that's just bogged down by slow, high latency processes. Step 2, import behaviors. You inject those zero latency technologies from a 2025 hub. And then step 3, capture the value that's created from that huge upgrade in efficiency and speed.
So what should you be looking for? Well, there are some pretty clear signals. Look for sequential processes where things can only happen one after another, like dominoes falling. Look for reactive systems where everyone's always putting out fires instead of preventing them. And look for high user friction where people are just used to things being difficult and slow. Any of those is a giant sign pointing to a high latency sector and a huge opportunity. And this brings us right back to where we started, to that quote. The reason this strategy is so powerful is that you're not speculating on some unproven, out there technology. You are implementing a reality that has already been proven to work somewhere else. Like it says, the event has already happened. Your job is just to close that time spread. So this whole framework really gives you a new lens to see the world. It challenges you to look past the surface and see the hidden time gaps all around us, in our jobs, in the services we use, in the tools we rely on every day. So the final question is, what part of your world is still stuck living in the past, just waiting for a time traveler like you to show up?